Well, the Cowboys off-season program continues, and so does the Locked On Cowboys Squad Show. Here we go. Welcome to episode number 2 of the Cowboys Squad Show on this Thursday. I am Jeff Biggs, happy to be joined by one of the co-hosts of the daily Locked On Cowboys podcast, Marcus Mosher. Marcus, great to have you on, and my co-host on the in-season Cowboys postcasts, the one and only, the coach, Glenn Stretch Smith. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. And coming up over the next hour, we will give you the very latest on the Cowboys draft as we are now 1 week away from Green Bay. Can't believe it. We know that the Cowboys could use a little help at corner. Could Jalen Ramsey be an option from Miami? We'll get into that. We spoke last episode about Trey Lance, but what about the guy taking his place, Joe Milton, the coach? We'll break that down coming up for you as well. And later on, I'm going to wrap things up with the Smiths. No, not the 80s band that had Emmett and Tyron. So stick around for that. We're going to have some fun. But right now, let us kick things off with the draft. Marcus, good morning. And what is the very latest as we sit here today, 1 week away from Green Bay?
It sure seems like a consensus is starting to build for the Cowboys at 12. I know we can't always trust mock drafts, but when every single NFL draft expert, Mel Kiper, Dane Brugler, Field Yates, Daniel Jeremiah, they're all mocking a wide receiver to the Cowboys at pick 12. I've got to assume, Jeff, that that's probably where they're going. And it makes sense because we've heard Brian Schottenheimer at the NFL Combine talk about how they desperately need to add an explosive playmaker opposite of CeeDee Lamb. At this point, I would be pretty shocked if it was anything but a wide receiver in round one.
All right. Coach, what are you hearing?
Yeah, I believe that's, they air condition the desert for a reason. And the reason is normally they get the odds right on where people are going. And certainly that's the direction that everybody thinks that the Cowboys are going. I mean, my initial gut feeling is you heard Stephen Jones come out and say early in the week, hey, it's more likely that we might move down than for us to move up in this draft. And I've always heard people say, well, boy, the Cowboys need to move down in order to get, say that 4th round pick that they gave up for Lance. They need to move down to pick up another 1 or 2 picks because we realize they have so many holes that they need to fill on their football team. Here's the issue with that. If the phone is not ringing and you don't have anybody that wants to move up into that 12 spot, you better be ready to turn a name in when it comes your time. And so I think what happens with so many of these mock drafts is that you have to have something ready to put out there. You have to say, hey, we're ready to say if this goes in order and no one makes a jump into this first round, or the Cowboys don't decide to either move up or move back. Okay, who is the 1 or 2 players? What is the 1 or 2 positions most likely that the Cowboys would go? And I think that's where you come up with these mock drafts. When I spent my time in the Cowboys, we went through mock drafts. I mean, everybody, Larry Lacewell would give you a position or a team, and you would, in fact, be the Steelers GM or whoever the scenario was. And we would go through and, look at these mock drafts and look at all the different scenarios. It was never right. It's never right. And so, I just say that, yes, as people in the media, guys trying to put some stuff out there that we think people can grab a hold of, I do believe that is the one is it the top need of the Cowboys right now? A 2 receiver? Do they need another corner? Is Diggs ready to go with the loss of Lewis, we could sit here and go through all the different scenarios. The point I'm making is certainly that is the glaring need for the Cowboys is a 2-receiver, knowing that they took a hard swing and miss at Cooper Kupp the first time they found out he was going to make 15 a year on a 3-year deal to go to Seattle. And they knew then that they needed that 2-receiver. And now I think everybody's kind of just saying, well, boy, if they couldn't get it in free agency, that they're going to have to get it through the draft. And I think that's why you find yourself kind of positioned in the position that you're in now with, people saying that.
Stretch, I want to ask you a quick question, because Landon and I always talk about draft sequencing, and you've been in these war rooms. How much does that play a factor when you're looking at your board and you see, okay, we've got these receivers in round 1, but if we don't grab a number 2 receiver here in round 1, we're not going to get one in round 2, whereas you could still get some quality, running backs, corners, on day 2, day 3 of the draft. How much did that play a factor when you guys were drafting?
It does play a factor. My initial response is, as I look at this, and I again, we're not going to, I don't have access to everything that they have access to. You try to really and I talked about this in our last show. Let's think about reverse handicapping this. And so, Marcus, I'll ask you, how many true, and I'm talking about true now, first-round grades do you believe are in this draft? I don't care what position we're talking about, right? How many true first-round grades do you have? And so the first position we could start to argue is quarterback, because we know people reach for a quarterback. Well, the Cowboys don't need a quarterback. So with that being said, let's say, just for instance, they have 2 quarterbacks with a first-round grade. Let's say they have 3 receivers with a first-round grade. Let's say they have 1 tight end. You see where I'm going. Now it's a numbers game. And in fact, might there only be 21 or 22, 24 true first-round grades? Well, we know there's 32 teams in the NFL. So somebody is going to be taking a guy in the first round who does not have a first-round grade on your board. And so that's when people start grasping at straws. That's when you start grasping at need. And this is not to say anything bad against a Kavika Pittman or a David LaFleur or any of those guys that we absolutely were trying to draft.
You're bringing up my childhood, all the drafts when I was growing up. And
I'm showing my age. All right, I'm going to at 4:30 today to eat at Luby's dinner. Big deal. But the point I'm making is, you start grasping at what you think can fit into your situation. We thought Kavika could be a replacement for Charles Haley. We thought David LaFleur could be a replacement for Jay Novacek. And that's nothing against David. Had a bad back injury. Kavika, it took him a while coming from, I believe it was McNeese State, to try to get, to where we thought he could be. But the point I'm making is, you have, with the 32 different teams, I promise you, that's why the NFL is so kind of crazy when you look at rules. Everybody looks at it differently. You couldn't get all 32 of those guys to agree on one thing. You couldn't get them all 32. It doesn't happen. So, again, beauty's in the eyes of the beholder. And, you try to say, hey, what are the Cowboys' needs right now? What do they really need? And, they need a running back. We know they need a 2 receiver. We know they need another linebacker. We know they need another corner. We know they need help on the offensive line. So when you have all those needs, all of a sudden, in my mind, you push yourself into saying, hey, never mind what these, what the guys who are out there jockeying this draft say. At the end of the day, we have to come together, and that's what Will McClay, I'm sure, is doing with the scouting staff, the coaching staff that has looked at guys, Schottenheimer, and they're saying, hey, what do we really and who do we really value is this number 1 pick? And I agree with you, Marcus. It looks like it could be a wide receiver. But at the end of the day, if one of those guys that they have graded falls down and starts falling down the board, you better pick him just like they did Travis Frederick a few years ago when they didn't need an offensive lineman and they got a pretty good center for a few years.
And that's one of the things we're trying to figure out is what players could fall that the Cowboys would potentially ignore their need for. And I even look at like a tight end. Like I don't know what they think of Tyler Warren, the tight end from Penn State, or Colston Loveland, but maybe those guys are higher graded than Tetero McMillan or Matthew Golden, but not so much higher that they're going to take a non-need position over a spot that they obviously need with Golden or McMillan. And I think that's where this draft gets really hard, because I don't think there are a bunch of blue chip prospects that could potentially fall, to 10, 11, or 12. And you asked me how many first round grades I have. I've got 12 pure first round grades. And one of those is a quarterback. And we know Dallas isn't taking a quarterback at 12. If this is not a normal draft where you expect to get, a blue chip player at 12. So they're going to have to make do. And I think that's why they're going to kind of default to a high priority position like receiver rather than taking a guard, taking a tight end, taking a running back with that spot.
Okay, well let's play that. I'll say, okay, we'll allow you to play that game. You have one guy in there. Now, let's say this, you get to number 11 and the three are still up there. Let's just say you've still got Jackson Dart, Shedeur Sanders, and I can't say the young man's name out of Louisville to save my life.
Not a shuck.
Yeah, because if I say it, you're going to say, God bless you. So I'll let you say it, and I'll say it, God bless you. So let's say you get to 11, and Ward is off the board, and New Orleans decided to go different than Shedeur Sanders, which, again, I'll play the game. All your guys, all those guys that are out there think that it's going to be Shedeur at 9, but let's say that that doesn't happen. All right, so you have those three quarterbacks still on the board, even though you don't have first-round grades on those guys. I can guarantee you that there are other teams in the NFL who do have first-round grades on those guys. So that's the point I'm making. Then the phone rings, and then you have to decide, I believe, now how far do you move back in order to get that guy? Let's say that you do cut it. And let's just, again, play the game that it's golden. Mm-hmm. Okay, I believe number 12 is a little rich for Matthew Golden. But if he and McMillan are still on the board, let's say you could pick up an extra 3 to move down 4 spots, and those 2 guys are still on the board. Now it becomes a negotiating game, right? And let's say it's one of those quarterbacks, and Jerry can negotiate. I mean, dislike him, whatever you feel, whatever everyone feels about Jerry Jones, he can damn sure negotiate. Mm-hmm. Now all of a sudden, if it's one of those quarterbacks, guess what? That takes a little more to get up in that spot. Now, if you pick up that extra pick and knowing the needs that the Cowboys have, I could certainly make a case for that being the scenario. But you're right in saying maybe there only are 12 or 15, let's say, true first-round grades out there. I mean, that's going to – and you're right there at 12 – all of a sudden that makes your pick a little more valuable. And that's the thing I'm saying is that's what these guys are going over in those draft rooms right now. I can tell you, because I know that for a fact. I talked to some of those guys in there. That's exactly what they're going through, is all of those scenarios and trying to get themselves in the best position to get the best player while picking up maybe another pick and seeing if they could wheel that into something. I kind of like going the other way. I like the thought of seeing if I can move up. But
the other thing here, if you're trading back, you need to rely on your pro scouts and the other people in your front office to say, hey, if we move back from 12 to 16, here are the spots where other teams could potentially grab the guys that you want, right? Like, hey, maybe The Colts don't need a receiver, so they're a team you check off. The Falcons don't need a receiver. They're a team you can check off. So they're going to help you identify some of the pitfalls if you trade back. And if you're dead set on getting Matthew Golden and you don't, he's not available at 16, then is the trade back really worth it to only pick up a mid third round pick? I think this also depends on your roster. And I'm of the belief right now that this Cowboys roster, I think, is good, but where they lack talent is right in the middle of their roster. Like players from 11 through 30, I just don't think they have a lot of talent. They've got the star power, but they need more of that middle-class talent on their roster. So to me, trading back and adding more top 100 picks is a great philosophy. And I'm with you, Stretch. Like, I think 12 is a little rich for Matthew Golden, but there's other receivers I like in that range. There's other pass rushers I like, in the 15 to 20 range. There's corners I like in that range. I wouldn't be heartbroken to lose Matthew Golden if you're picking up additional top 100 selections.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be fine with that too. I think that you make a point talking to the pro scouts. Okay, that's where they come in this scenario to say, hey, who out there is one of those guys that might be let go from a veteran standpoint going into training camp. Might it be a receiver? We see what's going on in Miami with Ramsey. Jeff talked about earlier. Jalen Ramsey. I don't know what's he 30 years old now? I think Jalen Ramsey is a hell of a football player. Mm-hmm. I think he's a stopgap guy for maybe 1 or 2 years. And okay, if you don't feel like it's a great corner situation, what would it cost or what would you have to give Chris Greer in order to get Jalen Ramsey? I think it's certainly worth an exploratory phone call, but that's where the pro scouts are coming in. Hey, what kind of grade do you have on Jalen Ramsey? Let's go in there and you tell me if the number one current corner in the league is Sauce Gardner and number 32 is whoever. Tell me, where does Jalen Ramsey fit in that hierarchy of how you have those guys graded? And then financially, what's it going to take to pay him? That's pretty good. He makes some. I don't know what his.
It's about $20 million a year. Yeah,
that's a lot of money, right? Yep. So now you have that. That's another issue that you're going to have to work on. Is okay, we got to pay Parsons. We've already paid the quarterback. You see what I'm saying? It's not just a name. It's a puzzle piece that has to fit together on 4 angles in order for it to make your picture look good. You mentioned how you feel the roster is for the Cowboys. I think that the roster is average for the Cowboys. That's my feeling. I don't believe that you have guys on the bottom of this roster that are uber or can be uber productive in the league. I know we'll go to tight end. You mentioned tight end. I mean, I think Stevens has a wealth of talent, but has been hurt every year.
Hasn't played a snap yet.
Right. So now it's an issue of what if we give him more Tabasco on every meal? Is he going to be able to get a little tougher? Is he going to be able to do this? And so I think all those things, come into play when you start thinking about how you're going to upgrade the roster, knowing right now, and if you're honest, right now they're the third best roster in the NFC East.
No doubt. All right. Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to take our first time out, but when we come back, I have a little nugget, and I want to ask both of you, who do you think might be available? Who do you think might be on the Cowboys target list with that number 12 pick in any position? So we'll get into that when we come back. Great to be with you, though. This is a blast. We are a week away from the draft, and this is the Cowboys Squad Show. All right. I want to tell you what's going on at Gametime. There is nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Gametime, you can be part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Gametime makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. That's a lot. Now, a couple of things they got going for them at Gametime. Last-minute deals, as I said, you can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, everything. And the all-in pricing means you get no surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you pay. That's good. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, guys, welcome back to the Cowboys Squad Show, episode number 2. We are 1 week away from Green Bay and the NFL Draft. The Cowboys have 10 picks at the moment. And my little nugget for both of you, I saw a little note today. This is the first time since 2014 that we've had no picks, no first-round picks traded during the offseason yet, during the calendar year. And so far, there hasn't been any moves made yet. You know, we'll see. We still have a week to go. But I'm curious if that tells you anything. And more specifically, as you know, every day, and Marcus, you and Landon have been absolutely crushing it with your draft coverage and preview every single day. I've said this before, I encourage everybody to check out the very latest. But as we get closer now, who do you think? Who do you think they might be targeting or looking at or maybe hoping for with that number 12 pick?
So I think it's one of the receivers, and I think the two names here are Tyron McMillan from Arizona and Matthew Golden from Texas. I think the only thing is trying to figure out which one of these two they prefer. If you look at FanDuel's odds right now, it's about the same as to which receiver is going to be the first one to come off the board. Now, if you look at the NFL draft experts, and I'm using quotation marks because you know what I mean. Most of them believe that McMillan is the better player. He had back-to-back years where he averaged over 100 yards per game at Arizona. He's 6'5". He's 220 pounds. And he's somebody that I think does a really good job of winning in the short to intermediate parts of the field. I think he's the better player. However, I can be convinced that Golden is the better fit with the Cowboys because you look at their offense right now. You've got CeeDee Lamb, who's a 4.5 guy. You've got Jake Ferguson, who's a 4.8 tight end. Jalen Tolbert's a 4.5 receiver. This offense desperately needs playmaking and speed and explosiveness. And while I don't think Golden is as good of a player as McMillan, he might be a better fit in this offense because he can play the Z, he can play in the slot, he can make plays down the field. And I think that's where a lot of the discussion has been. Do you take the better player or do you take the better fit? I won't be surprised if the Cowboys end up taking Golden because they think he fits better with Dak Prescott and with CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, you make the comment better fit. I would say my initial response would be, who do you think is going to be the better receiver 2 years from now?
I mean, I like McMillan better. So I think McMillan will be the better receiver. But I do wonder what McMillan would look like in Dallas's offense if he's being the X receiver and he's just not getting a bunch of targets. Because, listen, a number 2 receiver that you're probably only going to get 6 or 7 targets a game at most. Is it really all that valuable to have that guy? I think so, but maybe the Dallas would rather prefer the guy that gives them some speed that can take the top off the defense and force defenses to play more cover 2. I don't know, and I think that's why I've been struggling so much with this pick.
Yeah, you talk about, hey, how many times in Schottenheimer's offense are they going to say, okay, the number 1 read here is the single receiver side, which would be the X in this scenario if you're in a trips receiver set. One thing I told Jeff, I don't like talking way too much X's and O's football, because I think, you tend to kind of lose people, or, people look at you like, you're speaking.
Yeah, we'll just say the outside receiver, right? Like,
right. But here's the point I'm making is, I think defenses, they dictate where you're going to go with the football, and if they want to say we're going to eliminate X from the football game, I think that's what always made Bill Belichick such a great coach, was he could take who he felt like your number one weapon was, and he can pretty much take him out of the game. And that includes, if he thinks you're a great running team, you can play enough guys in the box that you don't have enough to block his guys. And so the question in my mind is, and I know what you're saying about, I think McMillan is a really good player. I think Golden's a really good player. I think Igbuka's a really good player at Ohio State. But here's where I kind of look at this and I say, okay, what if they shut down, if they say we're taking CD out of the game, we're going to eliminate him. Now, are we good enough at tight end? Can we get in possibly some 12 personnel and be able to run the football at these guys? Or do we have a good enough backside receiver to get it done? When I was with the Cowboys, we could do that, because we knew you go ahead and double up Michael, and Alvin is gonna beat you, and we're gonna beat you running the football. And so, fine, pick your poison. But that's the position that you're trying to get in as Brian Schottenheimer, and to say we feel good enough about that guy. And we could sit here and speculate. You and I could sit down and look at every game and every play, and how does he block? How does he run backside when he knows he's not getting the football? And we could come up with all of these different grades, but it's hard to get people to agree for sure one way or the other. So I think you make a great point. Put the 2 or 3 guys out there and see where it goes.
Let me ask you this, because this is something that I've been struggling with, is you watch these games, especially in the second half of the year when CD was banged up, and it was just so obvious how slow they were on offense, especially considering, comparing them to some of the top teams in the league. How much does that factor in the decision when it comes to picking these receivers? Because, at some point they've got to get more explosive, and maybe it's not at receiver, maybe it's at running back, but is that part of the thought process at all here?
Well, I think it has, I've been around Brian Schottenheimer's a long time ago, but I know he has the same DNA as his dad did, and he's going to want to run the football. Now the question becomes, I think the one back, Genty, is a good player, but I'm going to tell you, if I'm sitting there at 12, I think he's a little rich at number 12. I really do. And they say he's going to go long before number 12. They've got him going at the Raiders.
I just don't know if this team is ready or in a position where they can afford to draft a running back. Like, they've got so many other needs at important positions. I just don't know if they can do that right now.
I agree with you. They have, and I said it on the last show, you've got 3 picks in the top, 76, 75, 74, whatever it is. They have to get 3 starters. That's just how it is. I don't care at what order you get them in. We got to get 3 starters in those positions. And so I'll go back to what I was saying is, I think with Schottenheimer, he's going to want to run the ball. Might they find someone in that 3rd round that they think, and I mentioned the kid at Oklahoma State. Ollie Gordon, can he come in and get it done? I don't know. I just think that where Dallas is right now, it certainly looks like the guys that we're talking about are a little rich. And like, that's the part that I can't seem to be able to swallow without taking a couple of Tums before I look to take a good swallow.
Well, and I agree with you. Like just to be clear, I think all of the names that we're mentioning feel like slight reaches. The problem is some of the guys that are ahead of those players, like a Will Johnson, for example, from Michigan. I'm just going to use him. And he's a corner that was running in the high 4.5s in the pre-draft process. We know how much Will McClay hates short-armed cornerbacks, and Will Johnson's got 30-inch arms. You look at Matt Eberflus, this time with the Cowboys, Colts, and Bears. He loves long-arm cornerbacks. So maybe Johnson has a higher grade in terms of what you see on tape. But if he doesn't fit the scheme or he doesn't fit some of the thresholds that these coaches and scouts like, I don't know if he's in consideration at 12 either.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, all those discussions are every single discussion. And they at the combine and they saw those measurements, and then they sit back in their seat and they think, well, I really like this guy. And then you see those measurements. So that's why I'm really leaning to the Cowboys, coming back out of that 12 spot. Initially, I really wanted them to go up because I'd give anything for the Cowboys to get Hunter. But I think it's way too expensive to try to get up in there to get him because he does fit. He is a 6'2" Deion Sanders. Yeah. I mean, he can shut down a half of the field for you. He can do so many things from a defensive standpoint that I think it would, but that's why he's probably going to go 2 or 3 in the draft. So now you got to figure out, what your best option there is. But I'm a firm believer, just don't reach. Just don't reach in this draft because I promise you, this will be one of those. This is going to be one of those drafts where in 15 years people are going to look back and go, God, look at these teams that reached, and then there'll be 4 or 5 GMs they'll be playing golf and hanging out on this podcast with us because they won't have a job in the NFL.
So let me ask you this. We mentioned a trade back, right? And I think obviously Stephen Jones and the Cowboys love to do this. They've traded back they traded back last year from 24 to 30 to get Tyler Guyton. They traded back from 10 to 12 to get Micah Parsons. Would you consider going back from like 12 to 16? And usually you would get, let's say, a second round pick or maybe a high third. Would you be willing to lose a trade? Maybe you only get a 4th and 5th, but you go back 4 spots and you still maybe get the same player. Would that be something you would entertain, actually losing a trade, but picking up more draft capital?
Yes is the answer. Here's kind of my initial look. I haven't looked at the draft past about the top 60 guys. I'm not even going to come on here and pretend to have done that. But I do believe that the Cowboys see value in that, let's say, 65 to 95 range, right? So what's that mid to late third round range? They see value in there. And so if you can get in that arena, if you could get that other, say, 4th round pick that they lost when they traded that for Trey Lance, if you could pick that up, then I do believe that could certainly happen. I also think, though, again, let's just, for lack of, what if one of those guys that you have as a top 5 guy on your board falls to you? That to me, that's when you got to be ready to know that you're, without question, you're ready to pull the trigger right there. And I go back to my time with the Cowboys because and I've told this story a lot of times. I mean, I went and spent a week with Randy Moss, and I had never seen anything like Randy Moss ever. And we had the issues with Michael, the off the field issues, and Coach Gailey had come in and he was concerned about the perception of what had happened with Randy Moss getting kicked out of Florida State, getting kicked out of Notre Dame, and the things that had gone along with him. But I mean, I'm telling you this as an example. You have to be ready to pull the trigger in that situation, and you got to have firm discernment. And right now, I just hope that's what the Cowboys have, because it can make a difference and it can turn you around in a heartbeat if you have that firm discernment.
So I totally agree with you. I think the issue that I'm having with these, looking at these big boards is it's Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, and then Mason Graham, the defensive tackle from Michigan, 3rd overall. And then there's like a massive teardrop where I think the player 4, who is Ashton Genty on these big boards, we think is a little rich at 12, right? Or you look at Will Campbell, who I like a lot from LSU, but maybe Dallas doesn't think he's a tackle in the NFL because he's got sub 33-inch arms. Are you really going to draft a guard at pick 12? That's where I think ideally, yes, you're grabbing a guy that you have ranked inside your top 5 or top 6, but I just don't think this is the type of class where the difference in pick 6, player 6 on your board and player 14 are going to be all that different.
Right, but you got to have that. That's the point I'm making. You got to have discernment, right?
You're right.
So let's just say the tight end is there, and you think the tight end is the next rolling ball of butcher knives in the
draft
NFL.
Him. Yep.
Okay, and you say, hey, we got Ferguson and we got Soonmaker, and guess what? This guy is so much better than them. He's going to get through the middle of the field. He's going to wreak havoc, and you feel that. You feel that great about it. You got to have the discernment to say, I'm going that direction, and guess what? I'm going to see what I can get for Jake. Ferguson's a heck of a tight end. He's a very serviceable NFL tight end. Now, what can you get for him? What can we do to move him on? Or Soonmaker. I mean, I hated that they moved on from Hendershot, but they had too many guys in one position, and they had to go a direction, and so they felt like he was the maybe the 3rd best guy in the room. So they moved him to Kansas City, and we know he was very effective in Kansas City. So you see what I'm saying? It's the discernment of grading those guys in the correct and having that right grade on those guys.
I think the best example of this is what happened with the Raiders last year, because in 2023, they traded up for Michael Mayer in round 2, drafted him at the very top of round 2 to be their future star tight end. A year later, Brock Bowers falls to them at pick 13. They already had a good tight end on the roster. They took Brock Bowers, and he just had the best rookie season we've ever seen from a tight end. So, yes, if you get in one of those situations and you just have a guy graded so much higher than everybody else on the board, you take him. I just wonder, I truly wonder who that player might be for Dallas, because I don't know. I don't know outside of Carter and Hunter if there is one of those players that's going to carry a monster grade on their board.
All right. Well, let me ask you this. You have both made some excellent points. So I have a big question on something that you both have said, and I will ask you that question when we come back. Our second time out as this fast-moving, fast-paced Cowboys squad continues. This is the Cowboy Squad Show on Locked On. All right, I want to tell you about LinkedIn and what they're doing. As a small business owner, your work does not end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. Now, LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. You can post your job. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write the job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip. Add the hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, welcome back to the Cowboy Squad Show. Marcus Mosher, co-host of the Cowboys Daily Podcast with Landon McCool, and the coach, former Cowboys coach, Glenn Stretch Smith. All right, we're talking about the number 12 pick and a couple things. Coach, who made the comment that the Cowboys with 3 picks in the top, 77, 76, they need 3 starters. Marcus, we've been talking about the tiers and kind of the drop-off after number 4. Let me ask both of you this. The Cowboys need 3 starters in the first 3 rounds. Are there 3 starters available? Well, I mean, it's one thing to talk about it and speculate and hope and wish, but what do you think? I mean, can they get 3 starters?
Let me ask you this. I'll ask both of you this. Say the phone rings Wednesday, and it's Cleveland. And Cleveland says, what's it going to take for Micah Parsons? We want to put him opposite
hang up.
Of Myles Garrett. Okay, we want to put him opposite of Myles Garrett. Now, what would it take? We talked about how many holes they got. What would it take to get you to move on from him?
I mean, I probably hang up the phone as soon as they mention Micah, but if they're offering the number 2 pick, which in this case would be Travis Hunter, right? I mean, you think about it, but there's just no way that Cleveland is trading that number 2 pick, knowing how valuable it is to have someone like Travis Hunter on a rookie contract. So I'm sure they're going to be offering pick 33 and future first-round picks. And I understand the appeal, but you build a defense around Micah Parsons. You don't build one by trading him away.
Yeah, I would keep him as well.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I'm just asking. There's a lot of people in today's NFL that move away from saying, "Hey, you got to build from the front back." They think in today's league, with as many wide receivers that are out there, with the passing game, with what's going on with guys running these Kansas City and all these teams running these deep overs, that you better have you a couple of snake corners. You better have, okay, and you see where I'm going. I'm not in any way advocating trading Micah Parsons. I'm simply saying that there are a lot of people that look at this at different angles, and especially in today's NFL, where you've got some of these GMs who, I mean, are really, really young analytical guys. They look at it a little different than, say, the Bobby Beathards or the guys that built, big NFL teams early in the 80s and 90s. It's a different game right now.
So, Jeff, to answer your question about the 3 starters, I guess I would look at it backward. Like, okay, let's start in round 3. What positions can you draft in round 3 where you feel like you can get a starting caliber player? And for me, that's running back. I think there's going to be some really good options in round 3, whether it's DJ Giddens, Dylan Sampson, Cam Scatabo. The list goes on and on. So I think if you can kind of pencil in round 3 for a running back, I think that makes sense. I think round 2 is where you can get a quality defensive player. We know they need a corner, and I think that's going to be a good spot. I also think it's a good spot for defensive tackles if you want to go grab somebody there. And then in round 1, we keep coming back to receiver. I think that's a spot where obviously they could grab somebody. But if they wanted to go and try to get, if another pass rusher to pair with Micah Parsons, I could understand that as well. But I think running back in round 3, defensive player round 2, offensive playmaker in round 1 is your best path to finding 3 quality starters in this draft.
I like it.
Yeah, that's that, and that's common sense with depth of what's out there. So certainly, but I know this too, that and you've watched enough drafts to know that when runs on position start happening, everybody has that same mentality. Hey, we could get. It looks like they're heavy at this position, but when all of a sudden 1 or 2 of those guys comes up off the board, and then your rear end draws up a little bit, you're the one having to make the call. Then all of a sudden, that's when you start reaching for a guy. So hopefully, and I do believe Will McClay does a great job of this. He sets it up, and then he drafts. exactly how those guys being his scouts that have been out there on the road all year, how those guys bring their grades in and how they're lined up on the board. That's how you have to hope that he sticks to that strategy instead of reaching out there. And like I said, when you go to the doctor and he cracks you with that rubber mallet and you kick real hard and you're like, oh no, don't be knee jerk with it.
Well, I also think it's important to understand which positions you're okay losing out on. Like if a run happens and there's just not a guy available to you in round 3, I mean, it sucks, but hey, we can figure out that position either later in the draft or free agency or trades. Landon and I always say, of all the positions in the NFL, running back is the one that you can try to solve in July, August, September. That's not the case for a lot of these other positions. Like teams aren't giving away good pass rushers, and there's not guys available on the market when week 1 starts. So that's just something to keep in mind when you get to these drafts. Like try to prioritize the positions that you think are going to go early.
Yeah. Well said.
I agree. I mean, and now I said we got the new guys in there. You know what? That's the old guy mentality. You know what the bottom line is? Sack the quarterback. And if you can't sack the quarterback, then you got to cover him a little longer, right? You got to cover him another half, 3/4 second. That's the issue. And it's still the same. And it's not going to change. Football is such a cyclical business. I laugh my ass off at people who think that just because you can run open end option or run the quarterback on power or quarterback draw, what a phenomenal play. Hell, they were running that back in the freaking 50s. It's a cyclical game.
Longer than that. They've been running that back in the 1800s with some of these college programs. So, I mean, football, the more things change, the more they stay the same in the NFL. So that's why I won't be surprised at all if the Cowboys decide, hey, let's get bigger and better in the trenches and let's draft a Michael Williams at 12. Maybe he's not the best pass rusher right now, but there's only so many guys out there that are 6'5" and 270 pounds that can run the way he can and can stop the run the way that he can. So I don't think we can rule out defensive line or offensive line at 12 either.
I like it. If you're going to miss with a guy that can run.
Yep.
Yeah, well said. All right, well, hey, the good news is we are a week away, and we're going to be even closer when we do our next show on Monday. So the good news is we're back on Monday, but Marcus, you and Landon, you are hitting it every day. So
back later today. You have an episode later today in your feeds.
Yeah, so little tease for that. So be sure and check them out, and they'll give you the absolute very latest on everything that's going on. Really quick, before we take our final timeout, a little segue to quarterback. Coach, we talked about Trey Lance last episode, and Marcus, I know you and Landon already did an episode on Joe Milton, but just kind of give me your thoughts, because I think it's not a throwaway topic. I think, Joe Milton is a guy that could play. You just don't know what's going to happen with Dak. And I mean, he's still not 100%. And, the backup quarterback has become, a huge position in the NFL.
I thought it was really interesting that Brian Schottenheimer's, one of his first decisions was moving on from Cooper Rush, who they had a lot of success with, to go and get somebody who is as unproven and as inconsistent as Joe Milton is. But I think he wanted somebody with more athletic traits, because if you need somebody to come in for a 3-game stretch, if Dak is out, at least you can build somewhat of an offense around Joe Milton's athletic ability, right? Maybe you just take the air out of the football a little bit and only throw the ball 16, 17 times, and you use Milton's rushing ability. It's a very curious decision. I don't hate it because, this team, if Dak's out, as we saw last year, you're not going anywhere. So swing for the fences in Joe Milton. There's probably only a 2% chance that it hits and it works out. But the upside, I think, here is worth it.
And I think that's how they looked at it when they traded or when they gave up a 4 for Trey Lance, right? They thought, okay, here's a guy we can bring in here, get a look at. San Francisco obviously gave up a bunch to get him. What is our best what's our best avenue to get a look at this guy? I looked at Joe Milton at Tennessee, and I thought he big arm, He's very he has great ability. I mean, to push the football down the field. So that creates some doubt in defensive coordinators' minds that, well, we better play some sort of shell coverage against this guy. He goes over the top, all the things that go through that. But at the end of the day, Dallas needed a backup quarterback. You knew you'd played Trey Lance. You knew you'd looked at him for several years. He'd gone to multiple quarterback coaches around the Metroplex, and that you'd gotten feedback from those guys. We know Cooper Rush, he understood the offense. He was a good guy in the meeting room. He gives you a great scout team look, by all the coaching jargon. At the end of the day, neither one of those guys could really be the guy if you had to get in a position where you needed him to be more than a 3-game stopgap guy, which we knew Cooper Rush did a good job of that. Don't take anything away from him. He did a great job in those short windows where he had to come in and start 3, 4, 5 games.
The other thing they're probably looking at,
the quarterback for the Cowboys has been hurt 3 of the last 5 years, correct?
Yes.
Dak Prescott has been hurt 3 of the last 5 years. So now you got to start thinking about what if the next time he goes down, it's even, it's a full year or whatever the scenario is. And I'm not wishing that on anybody. I'm saying you got to look at it through a different pair. You got to look at it through a different pair of glasses, and I think that's what they're doing. Those 2 guys, they didn't feel like could be that guy. Let's bring somebody else in here. Let's give him a shot.
And I'm sure they were weighing it compared to the guys that they could draft on day 3 this year, whether it's Quinn Ewers, Dylan Gabriel, and they just look at the talent and it's like, we're not going to get a guy that's as physically gifted as Joe Milton. So sure, we'll give up a 5th-round pick compared to drafting one of these more limited quarterbacks on day 3. So from that standpoint, it's hard to argue with their logic.
All right. Hey, we're going to take our final timeout, and it's going to be really quick. And then I want to get some thoughts on the Smiths, not the 80s band. And also, we have some people that have weighed in with some comments. So I want to get your thoughts on those as well. Final segment coming up. This is the Cowboys Squad Show. All right, see, told you it'd be quick. All right, welcome back. Let me get you some thoughts here from some of our viewing audience that have weighed in. John Santucci says, if the Cowboys want a superstar weapon, they say move back to pick 17. Emmitt Smith and CeeDee Lamb were picked at 17. Matt Mann says Golden in the first, Makuba in the second, Sampson in the third, and 555 says, I no longer believe wide receiver is most needed at very top. That's running back. And Mirko says Cowboys aren't great at making trades. So if we trade back, I think we pick up a 3rd or a 4th.
I like the one who said Golden, Makuba, and then let's see if we can hit the trifecta with one more Longhorn.
There you go. Alfred Collins, defensive tackle from Texas. Big nose tackle, exactly what they need. That'd be good Texas stuff. I would sign up for that in a heartbeat.
I promise you, so would a bunch of others.
Yep. Well, I teased kind of funny a couple things involving a couple of former Cowboys named Smith. On a positive note, the Cowboys did the ceremonial one-day retirement deal for Tyron Smith, who officially retired. Wanted to get your thoughts, both of you, on his career and just how dominant he was as a Cowboy.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Chuck. You go first.
Go ahead.
One of the most dominating left tackles I think we've ever seen. I remember watching some cut-ups of him back when he was at USC. And one of the first highlights I remember watching was him on field goal block, jumping over the center and blocking a field goal, which is so rare for your starting left tackle to be able to block kicks. Just a special athlete and somebody who, when he was healthy and he was right, You just never had to worry about that left side. And man,
No.
what a special treat that was for basically a decade to have a tackle over there that you just didn't have to worry about, regardless of who the opponent was. Awesome career. It's too bad he wasn't able to stay healthier at the end, but I'm glad that he's hanging it up now rather than hanging on for a couple more years, because he certainly could have. He's still that caliber player. He can be a starting tackle, but he's only 34. Congratulations on Tyron. What an awesome career.
Yeah, unbelievable player. I thought when Dallas took Taco Charlton from Michigan, I thought, this is a pretty decent pick. I mean, this is a pass rusher that could get it done. You know what? He came in the prime of Tyron Smith, and at practice, he couldn't do diddly. And so it really, you hear people say all the time, iron sharpens iron. I got news for you. When you're as good as Tyron is, and you can completely shut down a person where they can't do anything, and that's exactly kind of how he was. I mean, he was the rock that kind of held it all together. And I do think if you look at his career, I think not only is he a Ring of Honor guy, but I do believe he'd be considered for a gold jacket, and he should. He's that good.
Yeah.
I think Wanye Thomas told a great story yesterday. When he was an undrafted rookie, in training camp, he was rushing off the right side against Tyron on the left side. And he said he got punched so hard in the chest that he still isn't able to breathe right all these years later. And Micah Parsons told a similar story, how the first day of camp when he was rushing against Tyron, he got hit so hard in the chest that his chest was bruised for 2 weeks because he's that strong. It's so rare to have somebody that's that strong and that athletic on the left side. Just an incredible player.
All right. Yeah, great career for Tyron Smith. And, of course, another Hall of Famer, Emmitt Smith, back in the news. But unfortunately, Emmitt is kind of in fun, but he's kind of sick of the losing streak. He pointed out, Coach, that the Cowboys have not won a Super Bowl since you were on their staff, and he's tired of the Eagle fans and all of their chirping and celebrating. And so all
they
that
just
to
need
say,
to get stretched back on the staff. That's all it is, right? Then we're back to the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
and I can understand that. I mean, Philadelphia, it's one thing to be a bad loser. That bunch in Philadelphia, they're bad winners. They will rub it in.
Well said. Well said. But in all seriousness, though, I think it just points to, I think we've all said in our own different way, that this is a big draft. And as you pointed out, Marcus, and you did, Coach, the other day, talent. Cowboys need talent if they're going to win. They need more. They need to be better, period.
Yeah, they've lost a lot of talent in free agency over the last 3 years, and they haven't been able to replenish it enough in the draft. We know they haven't been very active in free agency, and you mentioned it, Coach. They need 3 starters in this draft. We can debate and argue about which positions they need starters at the most. The most important thing is that they get 3 quality players, and if you get anything from one of your day 3 picks, that's fantastic. But you have to find some quality players. If not, that gap between the Eagles and the Cowboys is only going to continue to widen.
I agree. I mean, they're where they are because they waited forever to pay the quarterback, and we know that. That's how Jerry operates. Now they're going to have to pay their franchise defensive end, and they've got to hit in the draft with guys that can be productive, making rookie and second year and third year money. That's where it's got to come from. And all you have to do is look at a team like San Francisco to understand what's going on. They lose Hufanga, they lose tons of guys.
Yep.
Yeah, because the linebacker, because they cannot pay. You can't pay everybody. Now, we could argue, did San Francisco take advantage of Brock Purdy? They got right there to the dance, but didn't get it done. So that's kind of how you're judged. And right now, the Cowboys are having to pay, and because of the situation they got into for Dak, we know they're going to have to pay. They paid CD, and we know they're going to have to pay Micah, and so they have to hit in this draft. And it directly falls on Will McClay. I mean, all of this really falls on him. And so I trust in Will. I think he's done a great job of drafting. And guess what? Go do it again.
All right. Well, we will do it again on Monday. Marcus, your show with Landon is coming up later today, right?
Yep, we'll have a show today. We're talking about some of the day 2 cornerbacks that the Cowboys could target, and they have some interest in, so make sure you guys are tuned in for that.
All right, look forward to that. Coach, thank you as always. And Marcus, thank you. Really enjoyed doing this. Went by way too fast, but we will be back with you again next week. We will be even closer to the NFL draft. All right, thank you for watching, everybody. This has been the Cowboys Squad Show.